Among the many lightsaber variants in the Star Wars universe, the light whip stands out as one of the most unique and intriguing versions. Unlike most lightsaber variants, which typically feature a single and solid blade, the light whip can have multiple flexible strands, giving it a whip-like quality. This distinctive feature not only makes the light whip visually striking, but it also enhances its combat potential. But what truly sets it apart from other lightsabers, and what was its surprising backstory and the circumstances surrounding its creation? But first, what is a light whip and how does it work? In canon, a light whip was typically a heavily modified lightsaber with one or more flexible plasma blades coming out of it, and because of that, they were often much more difficult to use and master. They also couldn't cut through many materials such as durasteel compared to the regular lightsaber. But this is not to say that that weapon was weak, and in fact, it's actually quite the opposite. This lightsaber whip was widely regarded as one of the most overpowered and dangerous lightsaber variants, so much so that even Luke Skywalker had a near impossible time countering it. And while we don't have an exact date of when this weapon was created, we do know that it dates all the way back to the ancient Sith Wars. And while the Jedi and Sith may have made this lightsaber variant popular, their origins were also heavily entwined with the Nightsisters. The lightsaber get their multiple strands from tiny emitters on the blade, and while these were very thin, they often could reach up to several meters long. And as if the lightsaber whip wasn't strong enough already, many lightsaber whips actually had a switch where they could change from a whip form to a regular saber form. And as I've mentioned, due to the multiple strands and being thinner than the regular blades, this lightsaber variant was often weaker than the regular saber blades and couldn't cut through many materials. However, it could be used to entangle or trap opponents while still leaving them alive, although this would be very painful for them. And despite being one of the most dangerous lightsaber variants, this was actually more commonly used by the Jedi rather than the Sith. And these weapons were oftentimes very effective to be used against Sith Lords who use the forbidden forms. And while in canon we know of very few users who use the light whip, one of the most notable of them was a Jedi called Vernestra. She would make the light whip after receiving a Force vision about it, although she would try to keep this a secret from the rest of the Jedi Order due to them believing it was a weapon of the Sith. Even though when Vernestra created this, she was not influenced by the dark side in any way. She would still keep it a secret from them though. And her lightsaber whip was actually the first whip with the purple blade and only had one strand that we know of, although it is possible that we will see more of this in the Acolyte show and learn more about the lightsaber whip. But in Legends, things are a little different. Instead of having a modifier on the lightsaber, which allowed it to separate into multiple strands, this version would instead string many small crystals into a rope, and when the lightsaber was activated, the energy would pulse through the strands. And the user of the light whip could also change the length of the whip, making it far more dangerous. And because of its unique designs and abilities, it was often near impossible to defend against, and because of its different features, there was a unique lightsaber form made specifically for it, known as the Cato 9 tail style. And the style was often very difficult to defend against because if the opponent tried to parry a strike, the whip would simply flex around the blade. But similar to canon, this would all be useless unless the wielder had immense experience with whips. Because if a wielder who was inexperienced used the lightsaber whip, they would most likely maim themselves to the point of death. And in order to perform a strong attack, the lightsaber whip would need to be swung wide to gain momentum for an attack. And this would be a major weakness due to it leaving the wielder open to fast strikes. In fact, the lightsaber whip was also known for shorting out violently when struck with enough force. And probably the most notable user of this was the former Imperial agent turned Sith lady named Lumia, who created her lightsaber whip from Beskar iron and a shard of a kyber crystal given to her by Darth Vader. She was so powerful with this lightsaber variant that she nearly killed Luke Skywalker and Mara Jade with it on multiple occasions. Eventually though, Luke would find a weakness with it and would utilize a red Shoto lightsaber to counter it, which eventually would lead to his victory over the Sith lady and her death. There also was the electro whips that the Zygerians used, except those are not lightsaber whips, but rather were electrified retractable wires. While there are many lightsaber versions in Star Wars, I think it's safe to say that the lightsaber whip is easily the most intriguing of them. But anyway, that is the full in-depth answer of what lightsaber whips were. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to like and subscribe, as well as comment your favorite lightsaber variant. And with that, my fellow Star Wars nerds, may the Force be with you.